Emotional algebra, where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom.
Welcome to Emotional Algebra with Dr. E. Emotional Algebra is a podcast that helps listeners to understand the subtle calculations people make every day in their relationships with others. It's a podcast to help us all become better people through understanding the different variables that drive our behaviors. I'm your co-host, Andrew Tavani.
And I'm Dr. E.
Dr. E, good to see you again. Here we are. We've got an interesting discussion planned for today.
This absolutely ties into what you say the purpose of the podcast is. So yeah, this is really our purpose today, is really drive this point home.
That's right. And it has to do with everybody being a commentator in this day and age, right? Social media gives everyone the opportunity to comment on pretty much everything, right?
Right. You know, and the idea really all started to where, you know, I felt like I was the recipient of a drive-by, as I call them, you know, on one of my social media platforms. And it wasn't egregious. It wasn't aggressive, or it wasn't about, a hateful comment. To me, it was about someone who just felt the need to say something that I don't even think they watched the episode. I think they saw the post and they had something that pinged within them that they wanted to bring attention to, and they put the LOL in there, which I think, again, in those situations, we want to remember that we're commenting, depending on the platform, we're commenting on their business card or their personal family place to connect with people, and or their place where they just go to share part of their life. And I think that's what I want to talk about today is why do we do that? And often we say, well, if people are in the media, then they're opening themselves up to all this. And I think, as we'll come to in the end, Andrew, is, people are commenting on these things. They're in basically investing or engaging or injecting themselves into those situations. And is that really necessary?
Yeah, right. And just to be clear for everyone listening or watching, when you talk about a drive-by, you're not being literal. You're talking about just somebody sort of driving by, a keyboard warrior, sees your post, and you think in this case, and they left a sort of a rude or immature comment, and you think in this case it was more reacting to the content of the post more so than the content of the podcast that the post was promoting, correct?
Right.
So yes. Everyone understands Yeah.
And what I want to start with in this is why do we respond, if we respond, the way we respond, and what the choices are. So that's really the key in this is okay, when these things happen, we have a choice. And that is about exactly going into the emotional algebra and us looking at our own variables and our own equations, and also taking some time to look at the variables and equations of other people, as we're going to touch on some other subjects that have been kind of in the news lately as anchors to that, to really bring this to a broader scope and really bring in the broader audience on these, not just my circumstance, which to me was, as they might say, is the news peg, that then we take that peg and we attach a string to all these other connections in the media to create that string art of the story.
Yeah. So let's talk about your thing for a second. You responded to this person, but you didn't do it underneath. You didn't do it as a comment underneath the post, right? You just reached out directly to the person,
right? Through message.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, when I first saw the comment, I take a lot of these things very seriously because of what I do. I'm always looking at emotions. I'm also looking at mine. And, I recognized first off that I got pinged. And I looked at all what were my different attitudes and belief systems. So I'm going to be totally transparent here. One of them was, just don't respond because you'll escalate it and this could get out of hand and then it might make you look bad. And then what's going to happen? So that to me was fear. And then in there is also then that concept of worry. what if I do respond? How should I respond? And what if that's received wrong? And if I don't respond, then how do I look and how do I appear? And so that's where worry is trying to say, let's solve this quick because something bad could happen from it. And then I got to the point of anger, in there also, in one of that points of worry, say, oh, just eviscerate them, make them look bad, make them look stupid. They made you look stupid. And then my voice says, they didn't make you look stupid. You might have chosen to feel stupid in that process. And then comes that point of almost feeling paralyzed and feeling doubt, which says I have more questions, and how could I answer all the questions? The doubt about how will this person respond? Will they respond? What were their motives in their response at all? Did they have any negative intentions towards me? And as I looked at that, that's again why I look at my own history, my own emotional algebra, and realizing, was this really about today? Not also, was their comment really about today? Or was it about their history and their variables? Was my desire to comment and or not comment about today? And in that, I talked to a couple people about it, read them the comments, that these are all the different feelings that I have, these and realizing all those things about the algebra. And they said, absolutely, respond. It's how you choose to respond, because I felt like at the bottom line, my brand is about education. The next point becomes, do I have to air that education on a platform that then could have that person feel triggered, stupid, embarrassed, humiliated, attacked, because they have their choice on how they're going to take it. And in that view, part of me looked at it saying, this was somebody who just responded kind of quickly, thoughtlessly, didn't really look at their response, didn't have a really high understanding of nuance. And we'll get back to that in a little bit and how he responded. But what are your thoughts on this discussion so far, Andrew? And
well, first of all, I wanted to ask you, a lot of people, when they come across a comment like that, let's say on their social media, I don't think they're putting nearly the amount of analysis and self-examination into it that you just did. So I want to know, how long did all this take before you finally responded to him in a direct message, or this person? I don't even know if it's a him.
Oh, 5-10 minutes. I mean, I'm
it almost was sounding like it was a day or two, of
oh no.
Okay.
No, I process things really quickly. Okay. So I'm so I'm like a Turing machine.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting. I think it's good for people to know, but at least there was like a bit of, it wasn't a knee-jerk reaction that you had.
Yeah, right? No, I'm very careful. I had, again, a lot of situations I felt like I was both the recipient of knee-jerk reactions, and also at times, and what I really learned from observing some people in my life, I would respond with some of those knee-jerk reactions. And it's all about me not wanting to be hypocritical. So if I want to be exemplary, then it's important for me to really be mindful and aware of, what do I want to teach people and how do I want to help them? And that's, again, where people might have thought I just ignored the response because there's no response after that. I think I even might have responded, check your messages or something like that to the person. But, and I think I said something like, out of respect, like I said, I don't want to bring attention to the individual. People want to look, they can find it. But again, out of respect, I'm talking more about my internal response.
You're not trying to like put this guy or this person on blast.
No,
having done this. Right. I get it. Okay. So that sort of leads into another question I had. And that was, for anyone who's on social media, who's just sort of driving by, and is not the drive-by commenter, but might just be the drive-by person who's with the popcorn looking at all this stuff, and maybe they're waiting for a response from you. But you it sounds like you did one. You said to that guy, check your messages. So at least anyone who's watching this whole thing unfold, they know there's been at least another twist in the plot, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I took a lot of time in that response. Some people will say they don't dignify response. And like I said, part of what I want to make sure I help people do is to educate. So I did educate, and I talked about, concepts of emotional intelligence, because there was a comment about emotional intelligence. I brought in emotional specificity and what I do and why I do it. I then took their comment and I put it into AI, because part of their context of their comment was about AI and it being, the superiority of that. So I put the comment into AI and said, interpret this comment for me. And I put that response in there that drew attention to some of the different content in their comment and how it could be perceived. Why? Because I wanted to use the platform that they were touting to as a point of education, not as a point of humiliation. And that's where, if we as commenters are going to bring in data that we don't have a full grasp on, I think we want to be careful of it. I also used it because I think that using AI to help us to comment with a more respectful tone, and I even had it say, how would you respond to this in a respectful tone, that I put in the message, and I pasted that in, and I said, this is what ChatGPT said as a response. And I used part of that, and then I expanded on it. And I said to ChatGPT, if this person wanted to make a more neutral point, what would be the suggestion on how to respond? And I pasted that into responses saying, this is how you could have said what you wanted to say in a way that felt more respectful. And then I talked about branding. I talked about their personal brand and what do they want their brand to be, and a number of other factors in this whole context of just saying, be careful how you respond, be careful of the motivations behind it, be careful of how it can be perceived. And to me, that's one of the keys of that I want us, to continue to discuss on some of these other stories. Because again, even as viewers know and might know, Andrew and I talk about content that we're going to talk about on the show, and we often have some of these pre-discussions that we end up kind of replaying in what we're talking about. So we have aired some of these things and talk about what's the angle we want to take, because both of our focus is to be respectful and mindful, and to make sure we carry a message that brings more understanding and meaning rather than feeds the chaos. And what I'll say I see is really dysfunction in ways that we respond to things in culture.
Okay, so you sent the message, direct message.
Mm-hmm.
What was the response from this person after you sent that message?
It was about 6 days later, and wow. And they responded. Kind of the response was not just on the thoughtfulness of the response, which I think they appreciated, and then asking another question relative to something unrelated. So in there, I looked at it and said, okay, they got the message. They had the courtesy to respond. They wanted to move on and talk about something else, which was pertinent to the discussion. And then I responded to them, said, hey, let's talk about this further. I am always willing. Well, I can't say always, because I say always and never is never true, except when I say that. But I am almost always willing to talk with people who want to talk, to try to understand them and have them help understand me and us to understand each other. So I'm absolutely willing to engage in it. And that's why I had to think so carefully about my response. And even in the response back, I said, I got pinged, and I acknowledged that I got pinged. And that's why I consulted on my response before I responded or thought about responding.
So it sounds to me like the outcome here turned out to be pretty good. Worst case scenario, it seems like there could have been you could have responded and escalated things, but it seems like you de-escalated at worst, but at best it might have even opened up another avenue of conversation with this person.
Yes, and I think partly what I looked at is my expertise in psychology, and obviously having an emotional algebra podcast, I could have easily have used my response as a platform and a weapon. Like I said, one of the thoughts inside of me was eviscerate this person. And that's the part that goes back to comes from the years as a kid when I got bullied and made fun of and all those things, that part of me is in there to watch my back. And I just say to that part of me, work with me. Let's work towards something that's going to sow a better world than just going to feed the beliefs and attitudes that of becoming the justified persecutor than other people justifying their persecution of me. And I don't want to come across in that response as being seen as arrogant or being seen as dismissive, or just, using my knowledge or wisdom as, like I said, a weapon to control, eviscerate, humiliate. That's not what I wanted.
Yeah. So you talk about this urge to eviscerate the person. You said that might be tied to some things in your own past, having been bullied, etc. But don't you think there might even be a deeper tie to something like evolutionary there, to like way before there was technology or even social media? Like you're in the wild and you're, like your early human instinct, right? If you feel threatened or attacked by another human or another animal, your impulse response is to eviscerate just out of a sense of self-preservation, right? Did you think that's influencing it too there?
Oh my, what a great comment. You're talking, I mean, to me, that comment is talking about the anthropological necessity for certain emotions that have evolved with us over time. That's one view. So in some ways that's Darwinian. It's Jungian in terms of the idea of collective unconscious, and that we take things throughout time and we adapt. It's like there is research about that ants learn collectively, that something that one ant learns, and it's kind of, I think you might call it as the hive mentality. Correct me if I'm wrong, people, but I think that's what you call it, where we learn through each other and from each other, even if it's not directly seen. We also have vicarious learning there, and we learn by direct observation of what people experience and then what we want our outcomes to be. We're talking about hierarchical models of power, which to me are clearly survival-based and fear-based. And that's where we want to look at what drives that emotion. And that's where, as we look at these options, yes, we absolutely may have anthropological reasons for wanting to eviscerate or destroy somebody who we feel threatened by. We have collective unconscious potential motivations. We have direct experience things. We have things that that go to just our own temperament, our attachment, our social learning. All these are the variables that feed in to our personal variables. So that's a great response there. And yes, is that part of that response? I could say that all those can be points of data to connect into. And that's why I also believe that we, even though these might be our predispositions, genetically, anthropologically, relationally, behaviorally, I still believe that it's incumbent upon us to pursue a higher level.
Yes.
What does Steve Winwood say? The higher love. Steve Winwood had that song about
Yeah.
bring me a higher love.
Yeah. So that's a good question, but that leads me to the question really, and that is with all of that swirl of factors influencing that and bringing up the emotions in you. Like, what are some tips to step back and not react in a way to eviscerate that person?
It would be been about power all day long, power over, not power with. So the first thing is to look at what is your motive towards your power and the other person's power. Are you looking for power over? Are you looking to defend your own ego? Because as you said, a lot of people would look at when people see comments made to other people, like, why'd you let that upset you so much? And that's an observation. And when other people have it happen to them, then they get pinged personally. So I think the thing we want to look at is be aware of observing other people's process and let them have their process. The other thing that I did is I consulted with more than one other person that I trust. I didn't talk to people who I thought would feed what my response was. I talked to people who I thought would be objective and who knew me. And that's really important, because we can find any number of people. And that's also often why I think people comment to what they comment on in retaliation in social media, is because they know they'll get a bunch of other people who say, yeah, and that becomes a pack mentality. And we want to be aware of that pack mentality in that. And even again, this person who might have responded, I just felt like I wanted to, like I said, to use this for good. So use these opportunities to demonstrate to yourself and to myself. It was more of saying to me that, you know what, I want to continue to make sure that I'm behaving an exemplary way. I want to make sure that I'm not adding to the chaos. And then that's where bringing in other resources like ChatGPT to say, okay, interpret this for me. Make sure, see if I'm right, knowing that, as we talked about last week, we know that ChatGPT isn't always right. While I said last week, even, it's a point of data. It's a point to evaluate, not a point of right or wrong or good or bad, or it's a point of data to evaluate.
Yeah. So for people who are listening, they find themselves in a similar situation. I think a couple of things you did here is you did no knee-jerk reaction. Like take a deep breath, think it over, analyze the situation. Then you actually went and sought a couple second and third opinions from people. And then you sort of sought a second opinion or a third or a fourth opinion, really, from ChatGPT. So you got like a whole, you had a little bit of a process that you went through there. And and all of that, I think, probably helped you respond to this person in a positive way, right?
Because I go into a lot of situations when I do a lot of my talks, and I'm talking about power. I am going into situations, especially, like in Haiti. When I went there were a lot of people who came who wanted to hear something, who didn't know what they were talking about. And there are times that I am critically analyzing and evaluating their culture and the problems of their culture. The way I do that is key, in a way that says, I want to help you understand what's happening so that you can make an educated choice and decision in your actions moving forward. I could come in as the judge, jury, and executioner and throw opinions out there, but opinions often are that. They're just opinions. We know opinions are like assholes is a phrase. Everybody has them, and a lot of them stink. So that's why I want to go in there educated and aware, and using hopefully wisdom, and being careful in the words that I choose. So I try to be careful in the words that I choose in that, because again, for me, we talk about personal branding. It is about personal branding and not upholding to my brand so I can show something. It's about brand integrity, brand consistency, mutual respect, rather than falling back. Everybody says, well, people just behave that way. And that's where I come back and say, we have a choice. So I'm trying to demonstrate the power of choice.
Yeah. It's interesting too. You said, one early instinct in this was to eviscerate this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the context of you're managing your own personal brand too, had you acted upon that, you could end up eviscerating yourself in some ironic way, unintentionally,
Well, and that's why I commented to the person about his own personal brand. I said, what's your brand? Because if you're wanting to bring attention to your brand in a positive way, this likely did not, because of the way it came across. I said, here's a way that you could have responded respectfully and also then added to your own brand integrity and message, and bringing across more education than bringing negative attention potentially to you that showed immaturity and insecurity behind. Again, arrogance is always protective.
Yeah. Okay. So personal brand is a big aspect of all of this. And I think the next example we're gonna touch on is it's almost a confluence of multiple brands. This example comes from WNBA's All-Star Weekend, which just passed. And
hey viewers, our episode ran a little long, so we decided to split into 2 episodes. So stay tuned for the next episode to pick up where we left off. And until next time,